course 103, Rural Society and Polity in India, Unit 3, Village India, its Political Structure, Lesson 4, Panchayats, Successes and Challenges. The present lesson will highlight some of the successes and challenges of Panchayati Raj to show the realities in its implementation and functioning, to show how it works or how it has been working on the ground, and in that sense mark the successes as we see on the ground and also the challenges based on ground operations. The objective of the lesson is to make you understand the key successes of the Panchayat system and also recognize the challenges in the Panchayat system. The lesson is structured in the following manner. We will first look at successes on two parameters. So, one is the status of the Panchayat institutions, the number of Panchayati Raj institutions, the number of elected representatives, what is a fund allocation for Panchayat institutions, and also look at the plans that are being made by Panchayats. We look at all of this in terms of evidence in data and figures and statistics. Then we will go on to look at 4 or 5 case studies which show the role and functioning of Panchayats as best practices. We will then move on to address some of the challenges in the Panchayat Raj system as has been observed in their ground level functioning and implementation. The implementation of the Panchayat Raj institutions has seen success with coverage in almost every state of India. States have implemented the 73rd Amendment Act, which clearly stipulated and mandated that state governments need to constitute a 3-tier PRI structure. States were obligated to implement it. The objective was to have a common 3-tier structure in all the states. And Panchayat elections have been held, PRIs are being elected. The Panchayat institutions have made positive changes in village societies and made the village community politically, socially, economically empowered. It has opened possibilities for social change and development in rural India. And the system has also enabled central and state governments to allot sums of money directly to the village level for various social protection and development programs, which otherwise would have been difficult to implement in the absence of a local government structure. In fact, in the absence of such a structure, it was also not possible to launch an initiative like the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme, which in itself has created significant positive impact in rural areas. Thus, the most significant success of constituting Panchayat Raj institutions is that it has provided a ground level local government structure and system, which has now become a base for undertaking any form of development in or for rural India. This will also become evident when we look at some of the case studies. So, in order to understand the status of Panchayat Raj institutions, let us first look at some overall figures and statistics. The table that you see, the number of Panchayat Raj institutions in India, and the reference here is 2018. This data has been taken from the Ministry of Panchayati Raj data. The number of Panchayati Raj institutions in the country as of 2018 across all the 3 levels stands at 2,60,000 plus. Of these, if we see the number of gram panchayats or village level panchayats stands at more than 2.5 lakhs. The number of block level or intermediate panchayats is 6,600 plus, and the number of district panchayats about 630. So, this shows that nearly more than 95% of the total number of PRI institutions in the country are the village level or the gram panchayats. In terms of the number of elected members of panchayat institutions, approximately 31 lakh across India, across the 3 tiers. Now, in this, women representatives stand at about 13.7 lakh. The average population per GP. that is depicted in the adjoining map, the average population in each of these 2.5 lakh plus village level panchayats, it shows that on an average what is the coverage of a gram panchayat, that is the population jurisdiction that a gram panchayat has. So, once again the reference here is 2018. If we look at how as per average population gram panchayats have been classified into 5 categories. So, at the lowest, to begin with, those marked in pink color are GPs with a population of 500 to 2000. Moving ahead, then those marked with red are between 2000 to 3500 average population. Further, those marked in a lighter shade of green, 3500 to 5000 average population. Those marked in purple have an average population of 5000 plus to about 10,000, and those marked in a shade of bluish green are GP, where you find GPs with average population of more than 10,000. Of course, in this map, you do not see within a particular state GP wise distribution, but broadly you see in a particular state what is the average trend for gram panchayats. So, if we see the national average population for gram panchayats is at 3416. So, it is if we also see that most of the states have a average population GP range between 2000 to 3500, and states where the highest average population in GP is noted are West Bengal, Kerala and Assam, and states with lowest average population per GP are Punjab, Uttarakhand and Arunachal. So, if you look at state-wise average population, we see that states with highest average population are in the east West Bengal, down south Kerala, and once again in the northeast, in the east further east northeast is Assam. States with lowest average population are Punjab, up north, again up north Uttarakhand, and in the northeast Arunachal Pradesh. Let us move on to look at some overall figures on the number of Panchayati Raj institutions, and in the tables that you see there is state-wise distribution of Panchayat institutions across the 3 tiers. So, you have the village level panchayats, you have the intermediate panchayats and also district level panchayats, and also the number of traditional bodies existing in a particular state is given. So, that would essentially be in the northeastern states. So, have a look at the table, and we see that the state of Uttar Pradesh, marked in red, is where the maximum number of village panchayats have been constituted. So, more than 58,000 village panchayats, followed by the state of Maharashtra, where about 27,000 plus village panchayats have been constituted, and then followed by the state of Madhya Pradesh, where about 22,000 plus village panchayats have been constituted. At the intermediate level or the block level, again we see that the state of Uttar Pradesh has maximum number of intermediate panchayats, 822, followed by the state of Andhra Pradesh, where about 660 intermediate panchayats exist. When it comes to district panchayats, once again the state of Uttar Pradesh has the maximum number of district panchayats at 75, and then followed by the state of Madhya Pradesh, where there are 51 district level panchayat. Moving on to have a look at the number of elected representatives in the panchayat institutions state wise and across the 3 tiers. So here again, the state of Uttar Pradesh tops the list with 8,26,400 plus elected representatives, followed by the state of Madhya Pradesh, where there are 3,92,900 plus elected representatives, and then followed by Maharashtra with 2.4 lakh elected representatives. So if we see among this total number of elected representatives, how many are women representatives? So this table, if we compare with the total elected representative figures, gives us a slightly different picture in terms of the states which top the list of women elected representatives. So Rajasthan has nearly about 56% of its total elected representatives as women representatives, followed by the state of Uttarakhand, where 55% above, about 55.6% are women representatives, and then followed by the state of Chhattisgarh, where 54.7% of the representatives are women representatives. The allocation and release of funds to Panchayat Raj institutions. Let us have a look at the given table and also the adjoining graph. What we see in the table is the year-wise allocation and release of funds under the 13th and 14th Finance Commission. So, the release of grants to rural local bodies, and this has been shown from the year 2010-11, that financial year, up to 2019-2020. So, we see that in the column which shows allocation, over the years the allocation has increased, the amount of allocation has increased, and corresponding to that we see that the release over the years has also increased. But at the same time, what we see in the last column, the percentage of release, which means that what has been allocated and what eventually has been released, what is the difference in that. We see that the release has never, of course, been completely 100%, but it has been pretty much close to the allocation. We also see that there has been a little decline in the release percentage, especially from 2017-18 and 2018-19. So, the figures actually for 2019-20 release have not been given in the table. So, we are drawing the inference only up to 2018 and 19. This has also been depicted in the adjoining graph, where we see that allocation has been close to release. Of course, the difference is seen more for the graph for the bars of showing the year 2017-18 and 2018-19. The status of Gram Panchayat development plans. So, we saw that Panchayat institutions have been established, and we have also got a glimpse of the spread and extent of these, also the funds that are allocated to these institutions. When it comes to the key functions, the role that the panchayats have to play or they are playing, how do they fare? And one of the measures for this is to know the status of the Gram Panchayat development plans, whether these are being prepared or not. This table that you see gives us an idea of the Gram Panchayat development plans. So, we have state-wise the plans, number of plans that have been prepared, total figures for each state over a few years. So, starting from 2015-16, 16-17, 17-18, 18-19 and 19-20. So, if we first look at total India level figures, we see that in the year 15-16, about 1,35,590 Gram Panchayat development plans were prepared, and in 2019-20 this figure stands at 1,95,570. So there has been an increase from then until now. But also, if you note that between 2015-16 and 16-17, there has been a sharp increase, and then further into 2017-18, but this has come down in the year 2018-19 and further a little down in 2019 and 20. In terms of the states, so here again we see that the state of Uttar Pradesh has the maximum number of DPs, naturally, which corresponds to the maximum number of Gram Panchayats that have been there in the state, as we just saw previously. So in Uttar Pradesh, 49,543 GP development plans have been prepared in 2019-20. Followed by the state of Maharashtra, where 26,400 plus plans have been prepared, and then Madhya Pradesh, where 22,700 plus plans have been prepared. Thus, when we look at these statistics and figures, we understand that from the early 1990s, that is the 1993 73rd Amendment Act, and by 94, when all states passed respective legislations for panchayat institutions, from then until now, a look at the status of panchayats on some of the key parameters, it shows how far we have come, and the system has been constituted and well established with its roots on the ground. To understand about the role and functions that panchayats can play and know about their performance, we will have to look at some case studies and best practices which demonstrate this. The first case study, from fallow to fertile, is a success story from Cherpu Block Panchayat in district Thrissur of Kerala state. And the intervention here was to ensure food security by strengthening the primary sector. Cherpu Block Panchayat is situated in Thrissur district, and the Block Panchayat consists of 4 Gram Panchayats, namely Cherpu, Avineseri, Paralam and Balachira. And the Block Panchayat was actively involved in planning at the local level. I would like to state that the Cherpu Block Panchayat made considerable efforts to revitalize agriculture, and this in turn reflected on the Block Panchayat's attitude towards local economic development. The Block Panchayat committee decided to make use of fallow lands for paddy cultivation and identified about 162 acres of fallow land. Meetings were conducted with the Gram Panchayat presidents and with farmers, and decisions were taken to collect information on the required basic facilities and also to identify the priorities. Funds were generated through convergence from different plans and also from block funds that were available from MG NREGS. And the Block Panchayat actually guided this whole initiative and provided also the necessary training and technical guidance to the farmers. Through this project, about 82 acres of paddy cultivation was made possible. And the water table also improved, and it helped in generating man days of work. The project also brought a jump in farmers' income and added to local economic development. It also provides a model for good governance. So if we look at the figures that depict this case study, we see that broadly the Block Panchayat had undertaken 3 key tasks. So first was fund mobilization, then the actual renovation of water bodies, and also provided technical support to the farmers. And all of this was done step by step, and we see that interventions were done first by discussions, planning. Meetings were held at various levels, identification of lands was done, consultations were held, then funds were pooled and converged, and then the actual implementation work was carried out, but also linkage with market was also taken up. If we look at funds, how were funds generated? So, for specific tasks, funds were drawn and pooled from different sources. So, for renovation and protection of ponds and water bodies, block development funds were utilized. For renovation and protection of canals and drains, MGNREGS funds were pooled in, and for support to farmers in terms of providing fertilizers, etc., funds were used from another scheme. So, if we look at the pie chart which depicts the fund utilization, we see that 58% of the funds actually were from MGNREGS, followed by 38% of funds drawn from the block development fund. We now see in the given tables the specific amount that was utilized for each specific work. So, in the first table we see the renovation and protection of ponds, what were the works that were completed, and against each what was the amount that was utilized. So, a total of 18 lakhs plus was utilized for renovation and protection of ponds. In the second table we see in each Gram Panchayat what was the number of works that was completed for renovation or protection of drainages and canals, and the amount that was utilized for each. So, about 28 lakh 90,000 plus was utilized for renovating and protection of drainages and canals. So, what was the impact that this intervention had? Production of paddy increased from 8,900 metric tons to 9,000 plus metric tons. So, a difference of nearly 170 plus metric tons. And these are figures for 2011-12. Farmers got better returns on investment. There was a revitalized drainage system. Local water resources were conserved, so drinking water supply improved. There was a rise in water table, and it also generated work days. So, for agriculture, nearly 4,000 plus work days were generated, and for unskilled work, 17,600 plus work days were generated, giving a total of 21,800 plus work days. The second case study is of the Kasaragod district panchayat from the state of Kerala again, and this is a case study of post disaster recovery which is supported by the district panchayat. So, the Kasaragod district panchayat comprised of 4 block panchayats, 39 gram panchayats and 2 municipalities. So, the endosulfan, which is a pesticide disaster, had taken place in Kasaragod. It is a human induced pesticide disaster and affected thousands of lives, and in a way it denied the right for a clean and safe living environment. People of more than 15 villages were affected. They were subjected to continuous exposure to endosulfan, and it also resulted in stunted growth, in deformed limbs. Children were worst affected because it led to congenital deformities, it led to physical deformities in children, epilepsy, cerebral palsy, etc. The use of endosulfan in crops and plantation was stopped in 2001, and the national program for rehabilitation of persons with disability, it was a central government program, and the state government sanctioned it for Kasaragod district. So, this initiative, the reference year is 2005, and the district panchayat played a key role in the program implementation in the district. Now, as part of this program, the district panchayat undertook 4 initiatives. Victim reliefs and remediation cell was formed. It also undertook a rehabilitation project. It also undertook a self-employment program and a housing project. Now, the Victims Relief and Rehabilitation Cell was created to provide urgent medical care to the affected patients. Health workers collected primary data which was compiled at the Gram Panchayat level, identified patients with a history of exposure to endosulfan, and they undertook the following. They undertook a health survey, they undertook a socio-economic survey, and specialist medical camps were organized. A list of 4,182 patients was prepared, and the patients were identified and divided into 3 categories, and appropriate treatment was given as per their health impact. So, if you have a look at the table, the categories into which the patients were divided was those who were bedridden, and there were about 500 plus such persons. Those who were not bedridden but required help of caretakers, and here you had the maximum number of persons, so 1900 plus, and then the others category where you had 1700 plus persons. A comprehensive rehabilitation project was also designed for the mentally and physically disabled persons with special priority for endosulfan victims, and the district panchayat prepared an action plan, and funds were pooled from different sources. So, if you have a look at the table, you see that funds were sourced from the district panchayat plan fund, funds given to the block panchayat, those given to municipalities, to gram panchayats, and some other funds, and nearly about 163 lakhs were pooled for this project. The third project was on improving self-employment activities with disabled people in the district with special reference to endosulfan victims. So, this initiative was done to improve access to appropriate training and support services to enable disabled persons to enter mainstream employment or to start their own small ventures. So, credit was given for training, for skill development, for job funding services. Guidance was provided on selecting marketable employment skills. Then the quality of training providers was also assured, and job seeking support was also provided, like follow-up counseling after training. So, these are some of the activities that were done under this initiative of improving self-employment. The last and the fourth project on housing provided proper dwelling houses to houseless families with bedridden children in endosulfan affected areas, and subsidy was also provided. So, what we see in this case study is that the district panchayat led the entire recovery process. The third case study is from the state of Maharashtra's Pune district of a gram panchayat, the Kandali Gram Panchayat, which undertook eco-restoration and social development, and 4 key interventions that it undertook. One is first the eco-village scheme, second group marriages, third encouraging women with girl children, and fourth was construction of farm roads. Now, the manner and process in which the panchayat went about undertaking these interventions. So, first it defined the background of the problem, and then a vision was developed and objectives were set out. Thereafter, a clear action plan was designed, and the panchayat also ensured that there was institutional coordination. Funds were then mobilized from different sources, and then they reached out to the community and finally undertook the implementation. So, meetings were held at the panchayat level. There were different stakeholder consultations that were done, and also resources were mobilized. The table that we see gives us an idea about the expenditure that was made on these interventions. Starting from the year 2007-08 up to 2011-12, we also see the income that was received by the Gram Panchayat, and against that what was the expenditure. So, in the last 2 years, that is 2010-11 and 2011 and 12, we see that the expenditure crossed the income that was received by the Panchayat. Coming to each of these 4 areas of intervention that were done by the Panchayat. So, first the eco-village scheme. So, under this, plantation of trees was done. Every villager was to plant at least 1 tree. So, the logo was 1 tree for each person. Nurseries were raised in the Panchayat under the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Scheme. Saplings were distributed to families, and it was the responsibility of the family to upkeep and maintain the trees within its vicinity. Vacant lands, roadsides, compounds of schools, Anganwadis, public health centers, here also plantation was undertaken. In addition to plantation, drainage was also provided in colonies of marginalized communities. Biogas plants were installed, CFL lights were supplied, and also solar energy was promoted, like solar panels or houses to undertake solar electrification. Solar street lights were also provided. The primary schools were also promoted as eco-friendly schools. So, trees were planted here, which were taken care of by students. Solar lights were given to the schools, compost pits were constructed, and also children were provided with books and nature. Another intervention was on farm roads. Now, farms were situated away from public roads and markets. So, as a result, agriculture was being constrained because of poor access to markets and high transportation costs. So, mud roads were constructed, which connected the farms with major roads and marketplaces, and thereby resulted in access to markets and other vital services benefiting agriculture. Group marriages. This intervention was undertaken to reduce the expenses that had to be incurred due to individual marriages, and families which were willing to join group marriage ceremony was obtained by the Panchayat, and the willing couples who were ready to marry on a fixed date in a convenient place, the marriages were registered by the Panchayat, and the Panchayat also sent a report following which parents of the girls in the group marriage were given an incentive award of 10,000 rupees. Another intervention was encouraging women with girl children. So, support was provided to women with 2 female children, and also who prevented further child birth. Such women were publicly felicitated, and everyone was made to pledge for saving the girl child, and Panchayat gave financial incentives to such women. The 4th case study is from the state of Punjab, Gurdaspur district of a Gram Panchayat, Talwandi, Bharat. And this is pertaining to release of Shamlat land. So, there was an encroachment of Shamlat land, that is a village common which is owned by the village. So, this case study depicts the release, lease and utilization of that village common land. Now, Panchayat land was being utilized by individuals, influential persons, land mafia for their own purpose, and they had established their ownership rights also on this land. There was no proper record of the land that was available in the Panchayat office, so which also added to the difficulty to identify that this land belonged to the Panchayat. And this situation had been prevailing for nearly about 40 years. So, what the Gram Panchayat did? So, first the Panchayat identified the Panchayat land and also the unauthorized occupants. So, they identified, the complete records were made, they discussed this in the Panchayat meetings, then they took consent of all Panchayat members that they needed to get that land vacated. Second, then they approached those who had occupied the land and motivate them to cooperate. So the unauthorized occupants were motivated at a personal level by the Sarpanch, by the members of the Panchayat to vacate that land. And the Panchayat decided that the Panchayat members who were also in the possession of such land should vacate that land and set an example for others. And after a lot of persuasion, the unauthorized occupants decided to vacate the common land. Next, it was important to generate support from government machinery. So the Sarpanch, the Panchayat members started contacting the government officials for their support to get the land vacated. The Sarpanch even went to the extent of going to court against those who were not prepared to vacate the land. The collector of the district also passed orders and ensured that there was strict adherence to the orders. So in these 4 different cases, we saw the role that was played by all the 3 different tiers. So we saw 2 cases of village level panchayats, we saw 1 case of block level panchayat and another case of the district level panchayat. And we see the diverse set of roles played or the support provided by panchayat across each of the cases. So whether it was improving and enhancing livelihood or enhancing the resource in the case of the Cherpu block panchayat, or undertaking a holistic set of interventions in the case of the village panchayat in Pune district, or to provide disaster recovery and support as in the case of the endosulfan disaster in Kasargod district and undertaken by the district panchayat, or whether it is regarding the resolution of a conflict, which we saw in the case of the Talwandi Bharat Gram Panchayat in Gurdaspur, Punjab. So these case studies demonstrate and present to us the role that has been played by panchayats. Not just that, but also the potential that the panchayats have in playing different functions and carrying out different activities, works, and leading to rural development. So these different case studies demonstrate and illustrate to us the role that can be played by panchayats in carrying out rural development. Despite such a significant role being played by panchayats and the successes that have been seen, there are also challenges that exist. Like there are concerns that panchayats have not evolved as units of decentralized governance. Political and caste factionalism, corruption, power concentration, all these have also stood in the way of the panchayat institutions. Like Panchayat Raj system has possibly become individual or Sarpanch centric, and more benefits are channelized to some groups of the village community, which results in continued inequality in the village society. Even when judged with respect to participation of people, especially women and the marginalized sections, or having accountability towards the electorate or delivery of development programs, shortcomings have been observed. In this lesson, the challenges that will be highlighted are as follows: more delegation of power to panchayats rather than decentralization, that is an observation that has been made. Financial challenges make it difficult for panchayats to perform their functions. Then overlap of functions of the 3 tiers. There are factors that prevent smooth relationship between panchayat institutions and administrative officials. The socio-economic political influences that lead to undemocratic composition of the Gram Panchayat. The Sarpanch emerging as more powerful than other panchayat members. Gaps in capacities of panchayats as implementing agencies. Reservation of seats not necessarily being translated into inclusion. Gram Sabhas have become advisory bodies rather than playing the role of an assembly. Then we will also have a brief look at Schedule 6 areas and PSA areas. Delegation and not decentralization. So, the centre mandates setting of Panchayat Raj system as per constitutional provisions, endow the panchayats with such power and authority as may be necessary to enable them to function as institutions of self-government. The word may implies that the devolution of power and authority to the panchayats depends on the state. And it has been observed that states delegate duty and not power to panchayats. There are instances where due to poor performance or lack of adequate resources, panchayats have been suspended as a temporary measure, and elections have been deferred at the expiry of that panchayat's term. Moreover, panchayat institutions have been seen to become more as implementing agencies for extension of development and welfare programs rather than being seen as self-governing institutions. The role and vision of panchayat is also viewed in a very narrow fashion, not as an institution which has an important role in the overall development of rural India. If we look at panchayats even as implementing agencies, here also there are challenges. The expertise that is available to panchayats is limited, particularly in planning, in implementation, in monitoring of different development programs, and therefore the entire process and the planning suffers and it remains on paper. Also, there are various programs that are initiated by the state and also the centre governments where panchayats may not play a central role. And there are other community based organizations and agencies which have been constituted for implementing the different works, and leading to a multiplicity of agencies and bodies for undertaking development activities. Financial resources. In order to disburse their activities and functions, panchayats need financial resources. Now, the availability of the financial resources depends on allocation that is made by the state and central governments, and also what is generated from the local economy. Now, it has been observed that panchayats generally are reluctant to raise the necessary funds on their own, and therefore, they are largely dependent on higher authorities for funding. At times, the fund allocation does not take into account the total set of functions, but the allocation is for different activities within a particular work. For example, if a tank is allocated to a particular village, then the money required for all the different aspects of constructing the tank may not be given to the panchayats. A small portion of this entire activity may be assigned to the panchayat with lesser resource, financial resource, while the state may take up the rest of it with the help of the concerned line departments. This again becomes an impediment. Even some of the core functions like drinking water, like rural roads, like street lighting, sanitation, health, etc., are being performed by line departments of state governments. Even the State Finance Commission, meant to ensure effective mechanism for panchayats, its recommendations are often not put into effect. And so, these factors and the inadequacy of funds has stood in the way of the successful working of PRIs. The distribution of functions and powers among the three tiers of the panchayats are not very clear cut. There is overlapping, at times duplication in function. The functions that are assigned to the panchayat and panchayat samiti may overlap, leading to confusion, shifting of responsibility or duplication of efforts. Of the three levels, the Gram Panchayat is the one that is the effective core or arm of the panchayat institutions. When it comes to relationship with the administration or with bureaucracies, panchayat institutions do experience some challenges like a lack of cooperation or coordination with the bureaucracy or block development offices. There are instances when the bureaucracy has bypassed panchayats and introduced different programs. Various studies also point out instances of strained relationship between bureaucracy and panchayat members. Plans and programs implemented by the administration come from above, from the state or the center, and the intervention of panchayats may often not be taken very kindly by the local administration. The existing socio-economic structure of rural Indian society is also a major factor responsible for some of the limitation in the functioning of panchayats. Often elected representatives or the panchas or the sarpanch and also at other levels of the panchayat are from the dominant sections of rural community. When that happens, they may have their own interests in preserving the existing system rather than bringing change that is more inclusive or empowers the vulnerable sections. So much so that the leadership of panchayats has even been termed as a gatekeeper to prevent the flow of benefits to all sections of the village community. Political support. So, members of parliament and members of legislative assemblies who belong to the constituencies of the respective panchayats may feel that panchayat leadership would emerge as a threat to their position in the constituency, and often effort may be made to weaken the powers and functions of the panchayat functionaries. On the other hand, the presence of MLAs and MPs as members of Zilla Parishad or Panchayat Samiti also overwhelms the panchayat members themselves and could kind of weaken the local decision making. States do justify the inclusion of MLAs, MPs and say that this is important since these legislators are representatives of local jurisdiction at higher levels. So, they need to be a part of the local decision making process in order to effectively represent local interests in the state or union legislature. However, it has also been observed that they seem to overwhelm local decision making. Undemocratic composition of panchayats has also been observed. Various panchayats have been constituted based on undemocratic norms and principles. The manipulative nature of rural politics is seen at the time of elections when different tactics are used for electing members. Panchayat elections have also been often fought on caste grounds where the traditionally dominant castes have made their way to occupy and influence positions. And once the dominant castes have managed to occupy the positions, they find it easy to maneuver development plans to serve their own or their own community's best interests. As a result, panchayats, which were to bring about social change, in a sense become prey to such caste divisions. While elections do occur and people do vote and there are different reasons for doing so, but village members who vote are also concerned about continuing the existing economic and social relations rather than using the process to change inequality in rural society. In this sense, panchayats have come to be seen as political bodies or organizations which deal with power than with village development. The role of the Sarpanch. Now, as per constitutional amendment, there is supposed to be direct elections and directly elected panchas on a ward basis, also directly elected Gram Panchayat President or Sarpanch or Pradhan. There is a direct election of the Sarpanches. The Upa-Sarpanch or the Vice President of the Gram Panchayat is indirectly elected from among the panchas, the ward members. The direct election of Sarpanches is viewed by candidates and voters as Sarpanch being above the punches, rather than seeing the Sarpanch in a coordinating role. It actually marginalizes other members or panchs of the Gram Panchayat, and Sarpanch comes to be seen as over and above everyone. This may translate to an understanding that the final power or most power actually rests with the Sarpanch, and it could result in misuse and open up avenues for corruption among Sarpanches, or lead to unilateral action, and also affect accountability mechanisms and the quality of decision making. Reservation. The 73rd Amendment Act mandated that seats be reserved for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, women, in order to correct the long-standing social inequalities. 1/3 of all seats in local bodies are to be reserved for women, and seats reserved for scheduled caste, scheduled tribes is to be in proportion to their population in each constituency, and 1/3 of these again for women. So, most states have also included reservation for OBCs based on the population. All seats including Sarpanch and for Panchayat Samiti, Zilla Parishad are reserved for one term on a rotating basis. While reservations have improved the physical or the numerical presence of the different sections in elected bodies, but this may not always lead to inclusion of activities for the benefit of women or of the marginalized groups. Reservation itself has not been as successful in ensuring that there is an equal voice in decision making. Why this occurs or why this may happen? So, the dynamics of social interaction between lower or higher castes of men and women, where the lower castes or women are not able to assert themselves as equals to upper caste or to men. Lower caste women have an additional problem of being discriminated against due to caste and also gender. In several states, studies and field reports show that scheduled caste women Sarpanches were not able to speak up or even sit with male panchayat members. Even in the case of women Sarpanches, their husbands have been in several cases seen as acting proxy. They are also called Pradhan Pati. They attend all the meetings and take decisions on behalf of the woman Sarpanch. Having said all of this, there are cases, however, when reservations have improved the voice of women and the marginalized sections, especially the role of women representatives in bringing on board issues and activities that benefit them has been instrumental. The role of the Gram Sabha. The Gram Sabha is to have an important role in planning, in decision making, in approval, and also in accountability. It has been observed on the ground that the Gram Sabha has not been empowered enough to have control over the Gram Panchayat. Rather, it has been made an advisory body, in some cases more of a formality or just on paper. The Gram Panchayat increasingly has been seen as emerging to be more powerful than the Gram Sabha, and this view has also been seen not just among the village community, but also the elected representatives themselves. Adult members of the Gram Sabha do not participate in the meetings. Meetings are poorly publicized, information is not circulated. The meetings may be attended only by potential beneficiaries, and they may be only scheme-based discussions than more development-based, holistic discussions. The required number of meetings may not be held. The Sarpanch or the Panchas may not be willing to convene meetings. The Gram Sabha is also a mechanism of accountability, because it is a forum at which accounts should be presented and discussions of fund resource allocation is to be held. The Gram Sabhas have not necessarily been functioning as an accountability mechanism. There are compromises on transparency of Gram Panchayat work, or the use of funds. the PSA Act. Though the PSA Act is a milestone in decentralization of power in Schedule 5 areas, however, there are gaps in its actual implementation. State governments need to amend their state laws, incorporate required changes, and also build the capacities of officials to implement PSA. There is also scope for misinterpretation, allowing states to take advantage of the slightly ambiguous language in the Act. Schedule 6 areas. In the Schedule 6 areas, that is in the northeast, there has been a variation in devolution among the autonomous district councils. There have also been questions on the development role of the autonomous district councils and also the quality of governance. So, these are few of the issues that have been observed in the constitution, the working and functioning of the Panchayat Raj institutions in rural India. On this note, I conclude the present lesson, lesson 4. I leave you to do an activity. Identify any one challenge of Panchayati Raj institutions other than those that have already been covered in the lesson. How can this be dealt with or addressed in order to ensure that panchayats can perform well? Write a one-page policy note, that is, a note as if addressing a policy maker to bring a policy change to resolve this issue or challenge that you have identified. So, in that policy note, give a background, give a context, clearly spell out the problem, give some evidence for it, and fourth, provide your suggestion or recommendation. Thank you.